Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about my go-to strategy for acing job interviews. When I was younger, I used to be absolutely terrible at job interviews. I would stutter, I would avoid eye contact, and the only thing that I could think about was bombing the job interview. That, and to mention the sweat. All of this was compounded by the fact that I used to be a very socially awkward person. Eventually, as I worked through high school and college and went through dozens of interviews, I managed to collect a series of interview tips and tricks that revolutionized the entire job interview process for me, and that's what I want to share today. A quick note about the video. I firmly believe that what you do before and after the job interview can make or break the entire interview, even if you did well during the actual interviewing process. As such, this video is going to be divided into 4 parts: preparing for the interview, right before the interview, during the interview, and what to do after the interview. Let's go ahead and jump into part 1, preparing for the interview. Now, this may seem obvious, but the very first step to doing well in any job interview is to actually prepare for the job interview. Here's how I go about it. Step 1 is take some time and do some homework on the company. Go to the website, the social media page, and learn about the CEO, learn about the values, learn about recent events in the news, try to stick to positive ones. Really just take a deep dive and learn things about the company that you're actually interested in. Number 2 is to take the information that you just found and turn it into a handful of questions. See if you can aim to learn more about initiatives that you are interested in and things that maybe you could not find on the website. You're going to need these questions later. Number 3 is to practice answering interview questions with family members and loved ones. Even if you're someone who is totally comfortable speaking about themselves ad hoc, I always recommend this because this is a great time to come up with stories and examples that you're going to use during the interview to convey the experiences that you've had. Now, these are the basic questions like, tell me about a time you worked on a team, tell me about a time there was conflict, how did you resolve it, and other questions like that. To find more of those, I'll put a couple of resources in the description, but you can just go to Google and type practice interview question. Now, a good rule of thumb here is to try and avoid school stories if you can. We've all had an experience at school where we had to work in a team and it didn't go well, or there was conflict, and they don't really add as much depth as maybe some other stories in the working environment. That being said, if this is your first job or you don't have any stories that relate to the question, then go ahead and use it, but we're aiming for depth here. Tip number 4 is to figure out what you're going to wear. You want to dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Whether you're interviewing for the coffee shop down the street or a Fortune 500 company, you need to look nice for your interview. The degree to which you dress up for the interview, however, is going to vary depending on the position. A good minimum for any job interview is always business casual, but if you're going to be interviewing at a larger company or a more prestigious position, business professional is definitely the way to go. It's never a bad thing to overdress, but it is a bad thing to show up underdressed. Tip number 5 is for digital interviews only. And if you're doing a digital interview, you're going to want to make sure that the background in the house is clean, that it represents you as a professional, not as a college student. So if you've got a shelf full of bottles in the background, or you've got a dirty, messy room, take the time to clean those up and move them out of the way where they will not be seen. Tip number 6 is to plan your commute. Now, if you know where the job interview is going to be, take the time to put it into Google Maps and check how long the commute is going to be. Not only this, but make sure you check the times when there's actually traffic. If you plan on leaving at 3 p.m., right when rush hour is about to start, and you check the traffic at 6 a.m., it's obviously not going to be an accurate estimate. So you want to aim to be there early, but not too early. Generally, I try and show up about 20 minutes early into the parking lot and enter the office about 5 to 10 minutes early. Now, the reason that I wait in the car is that I don't want to put pressure on the interviewer and make them think that I'm showing up so early that I'm rushing them. They probably have a number of other things to take care of, and I'll just use the time to review the questions and the research that I prepared beforehand to make sure that I can quickly reference it during the interview. Tip number 2, preparing right before the interview. So as I said earlier, aim to get to the office 5 to 10 minutes early and treat everyone very politely and kindly when you enter the office. Make sure that you greet the person at the front desk politely and let them know that you're there for an interview. It would not hurt to try and make conversation with this person and just be all around friendly and open. I once had a friend tell me that at their company, while the person was waiting, the interviewer would ask the receptionist if the person was polite, kind, and friendly. If the answer was no, the interview would be cut short and the person would not get the job. So make sure that you're representing yourself in a way that's open, polite, and kind. Just because you are not in the interview room does not mean that you are not being evaluated. Oftentimes, people have worked at companies for decades and their opinions are very highly valued. Not only this, but it's just a nice human thing to do to come in, say hello, greet them, and make conversation. I guarantee you the interview did not start when you sat down with the interviewer, it started the second you walked in the door. So be careful. Tip number 2 for right before the interview is to be patient. Make a point not to constantly look at your watch or your phone to figure out what time it is, especially if the interviewer is running late. Just like at the doctor's office, things come up and interviews get behind schedule. It's important to be patient and show that you are flexible when it comes to minor inconveniences. Don't let the receptionist or anyone else show that you're worried about going over time, or that the interview is supposed to start 15 minutes ago and you're wondering where they are. Most likely when the person comes out, they will apologize and just let them know it's no problem and you are happy to wait. So the third and final tip for right before the interview is to relax. If you can avoid it, try not to get yourself worked up over the weight of this interview, even if it's for your dream job. Try instead to think of it as a conversation rather than some test that you have the potential to fail. So take a couple of deep breaths, relax your muscles, and just chill. Everything is going to be fine. Now we're on to part 3, which is what to do during the interview. So step 1 is to greet the interviewer in a friendly and open way. Shake their hand or touch their elbow if COVID is still going on, and ask them about how their day is going, and just be open and friendly. Tip number 2 is a continuance of the last one a little bit, and that's to stand up straight and display confident body posture. The last thing that you want to do is go into a job interview hunched over with your arms crossed, not feeling confident, because the interviewer will pick up on that, and that does not help your chances. So sit up straight, pull your chair closer to the table if it's far away, and lean slightly into the conversation. This will display open and engaged body language. Tip number 3 is to answer all of the questions that you are asked and recall the stories that we used in the preparing for the interview section. Remember, however, that not every interview question you get asked is going to be one that you prepared for. So if you get hit with a curveball, take a deep breath, relax, and just try and answer it the best you can. The last thing you want to do is say something like, I don't know. Give the question a shot and actually try and answer it, even if it's in a creative way. Oftentimes, these questions are used to test the interviewee's ability to respond to random questions and things that maybe they have to think outside of the box for. In an interview for my honors accounting and finance organization while in college, I was once asked to describe the color yellow. I went ahead and answered the question that I would describe yellow to a person who cannot see as a feeling of warmth, kind of like the feeling that you get on your face from the sun. Now, obviously there was no right answer here because people were going to answer in various different ways. My fourth and final tip for during the interview is to ask the questions that you wrote down in the preparing for the interview section. Remember how I said you'll need them later? You don't want to take too much of the interviewer's time, so I usually try to stick to 1 or 2 questions. This is an awesome opportunity to show the interviewer that you did your homework and that you're actually interested. This is, however, not a great time to ask about whether you got the job, what the salary is going to be, and other basic questions that could be answered with a Google search. Focus on depth either in learning about the company or learning more about the interviewer. The 2 questions that I always ask at the end of the interview are, is there anything with my application that concerns you? And what is the most valuable experience you've gained from working at this company? Now we are on to our 4th and final stage of preparing for the interview, and that is what to do after the interview. You may think, what do you mean? The interview is over, I wait for a call from the recruiter or the interviewer, and I go from there. But that is actually not the strategy that I recommend. Immediately after the interview, make sure that you thank the interviewer for their time and the opportunity to interview with them. As you're walking out, make sure that you thank the receptionist or person at the front of the company who greeted you and tell them to have a good day. You want to make sure you leave on a positive note. Number 2 is to write down anything that you learned that was meaningful about either the company or the interviewer during the course of the interview. This is an awesome tip that I learned from the president of an organization I was in college. He told me that when you're networking or interacting with someone and they give you a business card, after you have the conversation conversation, walk away and write down 2 or 3 meaningful things that you talked about during your conversation. A couple of examples of this could be maybe they said they're taking a skiing trip with their family this weekend, or the 3 things that they absolutely love about the company and why they would recommend anyone. You'll see why we want to use this later, but make sure that you keep the business card handy after you've written that down. Tip number 3 is when you get back to your current job or back home, once the interview is finished, try to relax and not overthink the interview. You did it, you showed up, and that was the hardest part, and you should just be happy that you made it there. Don't torture yourself by sitting there and overanalyzing any mistakes that you made. In terms of mistakes, however, if you are planning on doing more interviews or you're applying to a bunch of jobs, this would be an awesome time to open up a new document and write down things about the interview that you think went well and things that you think you could improve upon. Save the list and use it to refer back to the next time that you're preparing for a job interview. That way you can know where things went well and what you should try to improve upon before the next interview actually starts. Tip number 4 for after the interview is following up. If you have their information either from a business card or from the pre-interview emails, you're going to want to follow up and say thank you again for the interview. The key here is that you don't want to do it right away. Give the interviewer some time to think about how the interview went and to deal with other responsibilities. Generally, I give an interviewer anywhere from a couple hours to a whole day before following up. If your interview was on Friday and you're going into the weekend, give the interviewer until Monday or Tuesday to follow up so they don't have to get bogged down with extra emails on their way out the door. So here's an example of what you should say. Hi, John. I wanted to reach out and thank you again for the opportunity to interview with you today. It was very cool to hear about reference the thing that you wrote down and all of the other things that the company has to offer in the specific field that I'm interested in. I hope that you had an awesome time doing the thing that you mentioned that was not related to work, example skiing trip, and you enjoy the rest of your week. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Michael Carlton. Generally in this follow-up email, I try to avoid asking things about how the interview went or how others did in the interview. Here, the goal is to strictly humanize them and thank them for the time that they spent interviewing you. They are more than just an interviewer at a company. They're more than just a face of the company in that aspect. They're a person with a life outside of work and a life inside of work and a career. So acknowledge that, and the person is going to connect with you on a deeper level. So hopefully you found this video useful and are feeling inspired and motivated to prepare for your upcoming job interview. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.